All good things come to an end, some more abruptly than others, and some good things get pretty bad by the time the show is over. You may remember these 90s shows, but do you remember why they got canceled? We do.
The 1990s were a golden age of television animation, but cartoons are a business, and even the most beloved shows were sometimes canceled to make room for more profitable programming. Here are the real reasons behind a few of those controversial cartoon cancellations. After debuting on MTV in 1993, millions of kids and adults watched the two giggling moronic metalheads of Beavis and Butt-Head determine which bands were cool and which sucked. That is, when they weren't terrorizing their neighbors, teachers, and Burger World customers. Not everybody liked Beavis and Butt-Head. Politicians called out the show for encouraging antisocial behavior, and one family blamed Beavis's pyromania for leading to a deadly house fire. Nothing stuck though, and Beavis and Butt-Head remained the world's favorite idiots. However, after 200 episodes and the feature film Beavis and Butt-Head Do America, creator Mike Judge decided it was time to end it. Speaking to Los Angeles Times, Judge said, "I actually wanted to stop a little sooner. After the second season, I thought, how are we going to do this anymore? I was completely burned out." Judge wound up sticking around for 7 seasons, but in 1997 he moved on to other projects, like his Fox animated series King of the Hill. Starring 3 old-timey cartoon characters named Yakko, Wacko, and Dot Warner, who were more or less imprisoned in the water tower on the Warner Brothers movie lot, Animaniacs was a cartoon quickly embraced by both children and adult audiences alike. Debuting in 1993, Animaniacs satirized cartoon tropes while being completely self-aware, offering up innuendo-laced dialogue and biting social commentary among the kid-friendly laughs. Animaniacs ran for 5 seasons and spun off its most popular side characters, Pinky and the Brain, before Kids WB ended the show in 1998. According to creator Tom Ruegger, the end came due to a business decision regarding another, much cheaper kids show, a Japanese anime series with massive commercial potential. Ruegger explained, "Kids WB was handed Pokemon for free and it pulled down big numbers, so then they wanted everything for free. Animaniacs cost Warner Brothers too much money to make and promote, so off it went." At first glance, Todd McFarlane's animated Spawn series looked like a show for kids. But Spawn was based off of McFarlane's top-selling comic series, an extremely dark and violent story about a former assassin who gets killed by his boss, sent to hell, and ends up working for Satan. Hardly family-friendly material.
You made a deal with Malbolgia. You cut a deal for your soul.
Spawn ran for 3 seasons on HBO and won an Emmy Award for Outstanding Animated Program. The show's 3rd season was a bust, however, and HBO's animation division was withering on the vine. After enduring numerous production difficulties, the show earned a quiet cancellation in 1999. Batman the Animated Series represented a breakthrough in television animation and comic book adaptation. Moody, quiet, and literally dark, it demonstrated that there was a market for dramatic superhero content that could appeal to children and adults. This Batman was so highly regarded that Fox aired the show in prime time for a while, and in 1993 the studio released Batman, Mask of the Phantasm, in theaters. Voice actor Kevin Conroy even tops many lists of the best Batman actors. However, in 1995, after 3 years and 85 episodes, the series left the air. According to Conroy, even though the audience was still invested and the actors were willing to continue, the creators had run out of ideas and wanted to end the show on a high note.
They didn't want to compromise on the quality of what they'd had and start creating kind of silly stories.
Fortunately for Batman fans, the story ideas didn't dry up for long. A sequel series to the beloved show debuted a couple years after its cancellation, bringing back most of the animated series cast and crew, including Conroy. The new Batman Adventures debuted on Kids WB in September of 1997. Originally created for ABC, The Critic was an animated sitcom about a snobby, hapless New York City movie reviewer named Jay Sherman. He hates most movies he sees, tries to raise his son as best as he can, and fends off his wacky family. According to John Lovitz, who provided the voice of Jay, "We did it for ABC, and ABC goes, we love it, and then they canceled it after 7 shows. Following its ABC cancellation, The Critic moved over to Fox and aired immediately after The Simpsons, where creators Al Jean and Mike Reiss had previously worked as writers and showrunners. According to Lovitz, The Critic brought in excellent ratings for Fox, retaining 90% of the huge Simpsons audience. And yet, in 1994, Fox pulled the plug. Despite a solid performance, an executive at the network thought the 8:30 p.m. Sunday time slot could be better used by a new show. Gene explained, "The guy who ran the network then, John Matoyan, just didn't like the show. He preferred a show that no one remembers called House of Buggin' with John Leguizamo. The sketch comedy debuted in early 1995 in the place of the Critic and lasted a mere 10 episodes. In the fall of 1994, the syndicated Disney afternoon programming block mixed things up by adding Gargoyles to its lineup of silly cartoons and wacky adventures. This contemplative and sometimes violent show is stylistically different from its Disney afternoon predecessors like Goof Troop, Tailspin, and DuckTales. Similar in tone and approach to Batman the Animated Series, Gargoyles concerns the day-to-day activities of magical beings who protect New York City at night. The characters were architectural gargoyles by day, imbued with the spirits of 1,000-year-old Scottish folk creatures. Gargoyles ran for 3 years and 78 episodes, but was ultimately canceled because it wasn't a mega hit. According to the creator Greg Weisman, it didn't perform up to expectations. Disney really wanted it to outdo Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and it failed to succeed at that. Angry Beavers tells the story of two beaver bachelors named Dag and Norb who live in an Oregon forest. By 2001, 4 seasons had aired and cancellation seemed imminent. According to co-creator Keith Kachorik, we were significantly over budget, behind schedule, and had generally worn out our welcome. Realizing that the end was near, Kachorik and the rest of the Angry Beavers staff decided to go out on a blaze of glory. Kachorik and show staff writer Roger Eschbacher wrote a script for a series finale episode called Bye Bye Beavers, an installment equal parts dark and meta. Dag and Norb come to realize that they are not real, but cartoons, and that their show is about to be canceled, which means they will cease to exist. At first, Nickelodeon signed off on the script, but when executives noticed all the jokes making fun of Nickelodeon, they reversed course. According to writer Micah Wright, they saw it all put together and said, wait, this makes us look bad, so they killed it. The script was never animated, but a recording of the show's voice actors reading it was made, which leaked online in 2006. By 1995, Comedy Central was experimenting with original programming, and one of its first new shows was a low-budget animated series with largely improvised dialogue called Dr. Katz, Professional Therapist.
Doc, does it bother you when I touch your face like this?
A little bit.
Is that inappropriate? Is it inappropriate for me to hold my hand there for the rest of therapy?
Nope, it's not appropriate.
Comedian Jonathan Katz voiced a therapist whose clients were all stand-up comedians who'd lay on his couch and relate neuroses that were really just bits from their stage routines. He also had a lazy adult son named Ben and attempted to have a social life. Ironically, it's Dr. Katz's own success that led to its demise. The show helped put Comedy Central on the TV map, showing that the channel had a unique sensibility and was a home for animated TV. 2 years after its debut, South Park premiered on Comedy Central and became a monster hit, particularly with young male viewers. Dr. Katz attracted an older audience, and since it wasn't in the demographic that the now South Park-obsessed network was trying to lure, it got canceled. With the arrival of child-friendly cable networks like Nickelodeon and the popularity of syndicated shows, the ratings for once-beloved Saturday morning cartoons started to slip. NBC president Brandon Tartikoff analyzed the budgets and found that the average Saturday morning cartoon cost $300,000 to produce. Tartikoff and his team realized that it would be much cheaper to get rid of the cartoons in favor of news shows or sports. In 1991, NBC signed a long-term contract with Notre Dame to air the college's games on Saturday mornings. It cost the network about $1 million a game, which was still cheaper than programming 6 hours of cartoons every week. Plus, it could charge higher advertising rates for football than it could for kids' stuff. In 1992, NBC switched to a lineup that included The Today Show, football games, and a block of low-budget sitcoms like Saved by the Bell, eliminating the entire 1991 to 1992 Saturday morning cartoon schedule.
Sci-fi shows that didn't live up to expectations were often unceremoniously canceled in the 90s, usually for complicated, fascinating, and bizarre reasons. Here's why some sci-fi classics, near classics, and never got to be classics had their runs cut short. Even today, the concept of quantum leap is pretty novel, offering up endless possibilities for a sci-fi show. Dr. Sam Beckett develops time travel technology and tests it on himself, traveling into the past and temporarily appearing as a different person in each episode.
Oh boy.
After some humorous growing pains as Sam gets used to his new identity, he ultimately rolls with it and invariably leaves his momentary host's life a little bit better than before he arrived. And his guide through it all is a present-day based hologram version of his friend, Al. Not only one of the few network sci-fi shows of the time, the 1989 to 1993 series was the rare genre show to receive attention from mainstream awards bodies. Quantum Leap earned 3 Emmy nominations for Outstanding Drama Series, while stars Scott Bakula and Dean Stockwell both won a Golden Globe. But in spite of the acclaim, Quantum Leap never leapt to the top of the TV ratings chart. NBC frequently bounced it around multiple time slots during its 4-year run, making it hard for fans to find. Viewership numbers reflected that, as the series never ranked higher than number 53 in the annual ratings. In 1993, NBC canceled Quantum Leap, and Sam never even made it home. It's only recently that superhero-based series have become mainstream entertainment worthy of huge budgets and good time slots. In fall 2019, half the CW's 12 primetime shows were based on DC Comics characters. One that's been consistently popular since its debut is The Flash, which stars Grant Gustin as Barry Allen, aka the title character who wears a red jumpsuit and can run preposterously fast. However, it's actually the second network primetime show about the speedster, following CBS's 1990 series, The Flash, starring John Wesley Shipp as the world's quickest hero. A dark, moody, crime-heavy show, CBS had a lot of faith in the series, dropping a whopping $6 million on the pilot episode alone, including $100,000 on Shipp's Flash costume.
So, what am I wearing here?
CBS didn't play it safe with the scheduling, though, placing The Flash, a 60-minute show, in a bizarre hour-straddling time slot of 8:30 to 9:30 p.m., opposite NBC's mega hits A Different World and Cheers, as well as Fox's hot soap Beverly Hills 90210. Too few people watched such an expensive show, and CBS stopped it after its one and only season. The early 90s NBC series seaQuest DSV had all the makings of a hit. After all, the show was set on a high-tech deep-sea vessel staffed by genius scientists portrayed by the likes of Jaws star Roy Scheider and teen heartthrob of the moment, Jonathan Brandis, as they had exciting, action-packed sci-fi adventures. The crew also interacted with a talking dolphin named Darwin and met a mermaid. A joint production of Universal Studios and Steven Spielberg's Amblin Television, it boasted a huge per-episode budget that made for great, for TV at the time, special effects. And yet, NBC couldn't pull in a big audience. For its freshman season, seaQuest DSV ranked a lowly number 83 in the ratings, perhaps because it aired opposite CBS's very popular Murder, She Wrote and Fox's Martin. Efforts to revamp the series, switching out cast members, committing to less science-heavy stories, and venturing outside of the submarine more often, only worked a little, with the show moving up to 64th place in the ratings for the 1994-1995 season. For Season 3, producers once more made broad changes, moving the action ahead 10 years, dumping Scheider in favor of Michael Ironside as a new captain, and renaming the show seaQuest 2032. That didn't do the trick, as the show fell to a lowly number 117 before NBC permanently sank the series. Anchoring Nickelodeon's Saturday Night Snick lineup for most of the mid-90s, The Secret World of Alex Mack was a sci-fi show about an Arizona teenager who gets covered in a secret proprietary chemical that gives her powers like telekinesis, the ability to shoot electricity out of her fingertips, and to transform into a sentient puddle at will.
1 minute I'm walking home, the next there's a crash and I'm drenched in some weird chemical.
The powers were difficult to control and often arbitrary, making The Secret World of Alex Mack a sci-fi allegory about the constantly baffling weirdness of adolescence. Alex Mack ran on Nickelodeon from 1994 to 1998, and the network was more than willing to greenlight a 5th season. Executive producer and co-creator Tommy Lynch took star Larissa Oleynik, along with her mother and manager, out to a fancy dinner at a Hollywood restaurant. There, he formally presented his offer for Season 5, which also included a substantial amount of money and a proposal of an Alex Mack movie. However, Oleynik said no thanks. The actress told HuffPost, "It was an incredible thing he was offering me, and I knew that at the time, but I was a little burnout." She wanted to finish high school and attend college, and also leave the Alex Mack character where she was at with the conclusion of Season 4. As Oleynik explained, she was starting to grow up. In that last season, she gets a boyfriend. I just kind of wanted to keep it innocent. Babylon 5 was among the most prominent sci-fi shows of the 90s. Its first 4 seasons aired on local TV stations affiliated with the Primetime Entertainment Network programming block, and when that conglomeration went defunct, the show finished its run on cable network TNT. Babylon 5 ran for 5 seasons, as had been the intent from the beginning for creator J. Michael Straczynski. He'd mapped out one big grand story about a space station, its inhabitants, and the sometimes warring alien races it encounters. In 1999, about a year and a half after the final Babylon 5 aired, TNT broadcast A Call to Arms, a Babylon 5 made-for-TV movie that acted as a bridge and setup to a new space set series called Crusade. An entire first season of 13 episodes were written, shot, and completed only for TNT to preemptively cancel Crusade before its premiere, rendering the whole thing a limited series. According to Straczynski, TNT wanted the show to appeal to a broader audience, and the studio made him comply with its creative demands. Ultimately, Straczynski didn't give the network what it wanted, so it pulled the plug. Superboy got off to a rocky start, debuting in syndication in 1988. The show followed Superman, aka Clark Kent, just before he'd grow into his powers as the Man of Steel and find work as a journalist at the Daily Planet. John Hames Newton won the role of college-age Superman, but he was fired after season 1 when he asked for more money.
Could it be because you always have your greedy paws where they don't belong?
That also happened to be around the same time he arguably violated a morals clause in his contract with a public drunkenness arrest. Producer Ilya Salkind replaced him with a 31-year-old baby-faced model-turned-actor Gerard Christopher, who proved a good fit. The ratings for the newly rebranded The Adventures of Superboy flew into the list of the 10 most-watched syndicated TV series a few episodes after his arrival. The Adventures of Superboy ran for 100 episodes over 4 seasons, and it was popular enough to keep going. But Superman-controlling studio Warner Brothers wouldn't have it. It started work on a new Superman TV series, Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, set to air in primetime on network television. Making it a much more high-profile project than the lowly syndicated Superboy, Warner not only wouldn't renew the show, but the studio filed paperwork regarding Salkind's right to make Superman television, preventing even Superboy reruns from airing. In 1993, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers debuted, and it quickly became a multimedia kiddie phenomenon not seen since the likes of Masters of the Universe a decade earlier. The plot followed a group of teenagers who were bestowed with mystical martial arts abilities and the control of giant robots, which they used to fight space monsters. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers dominated the ratings, while action figures of the different Power Rangers flew off the shelves. A year later, the children's television landscape was flooded with blatant Power Rangers clones, including tattooed teenage alien fighters from Beverly Hills, Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, and VR Troopers.
Trooper transform! We are VR!
In that series, a group of friends are given fighting suits and powerful vehicles by the mysterious Professor Hart, who needs them to fight the menacing army of Grimlord, which is attempting to break out of the virtual reality world and into the meat space. Unlike the Power Rangers, the VR Troopers weren't teens but well into their 20s. And unlike the other Power Rangers clones, VR Troopers lasted 2 seasons as opposed to 1. What ultimately did it in was that it couldn't compete with Power Rangers where it really counted: toy sales. The whole point of VR Troopers was to move toys, and not enough kids bought the merchandise to justify a 3rd season of the TV show. If you were a kid, tween, or non-partying adult in the early 90s, the place to be on Friday nights was in front of the TV, tuned into ABC's TGIF lineup of sappy, family-friendly programming like Full House, Family Matters, and Step by Step. By 1996, many TGIF shows were fading, and ABC made attempts to lure in newer and even younger viewers with puppet-based programming. And during that season, Muppets Tonight and Aliens in the Family joined TGIF. The first was an update of the classic The Muppet Show, while the latter was a bizarre sci-fi sitcom about a Brady Bunch-esque blended family, except Dad Doug Brody and his kids were human, and Mom Cookie and her offspring were mildly monstrous aliens. Their meet cute, Cookie abducted Doug, and then he fell in love with her. The show's real star was the strange and grotesque Bobit, a talking baby genius with a taste for chaos and destruction. The creature even had a catchphrase:
I require pudding.
Pudding? In the morning? Well, Philly doesn't think that's a very good idea.
Although the aliens were the work of the famous Jim Henson's Creature Shop, the tonally dissonant Aliens in the Family didn't mesh with the rest of TGIF, and it lasted just 8 episodes. Nor did it help to revamp the TGIF lineup, which by fall 1996 was back to its lineup of teen-centered shows. Star Trek: The Next Generation revived and reinvented the Star Trek franchise on the small screen, leaving behind the original series' campy vibe and clunky effects in favor of sleek, high production values. But it also ramped up the thoughtful, meaningful, allegorical plots, all led by the captivating Patrick Stewart as the kind and brave Captain Jean-Luc Picard. After 7 successful seasons, The Next Generation wrapped up with a finale episode that drew more than 31 million viewers. Blockbuster ratings for a network TV show, but unheard of for a series syndicated to individual local stations. A few months later, the show received an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Drama Series, which was an extreme rarity for a non-network show and a sci-fi series. So why would Paramount set phasers to cancel? The big screen beckoned. Just 4 days after the last episode of The Next Generation wrapped, cast members reported to a different stage on the Paramount lot to film Star Trek Generations, the first movie in the long-running blockbuster franchise to feature the casts of both flagship Star Trek shows. In that film, the old crew passed the torch to the newer one. William Shatner's Captain Kirk died, making room for Picard and company to occupy 3 more Star Trek movies. With the commercial and critical popularity of Star Trek: The Next Generation, it was clear that 90s TV viewers wanted more science fiction options, particularly Star Trek shows. In 1993, the space station set Star Trek Deep Space Nine debuted in syndication, featuring Avery Brooks as commanding officer Benjamin Sisko, the first African-American-led character in franchise history.
I can assure you, this old cat may not be as toothless as you think. Right now, I've got 5,000 photon torpedoes armed and ready to launch.
DS9 earned solid ratings in syndication for most of its early seasons, guaranteeing at least a moderately long run. The success of Fox in the late 80s and early 90s showed the TV industry that there was no room on the dial beyond the big 3 of ABC, CBS, and NBC. In 1993, plans for new channels UPN and WB were underway. The new networks competed to nail down affiliates, most of which were formerly independent channels around the US, and which had relied heavily on syndicated programming like Deep Space Nine. In short order, a few hundred formerly independent stations signed up to air UPN and WB programming, and non-network shows suddenly had less access to airtime. Oddly enough, UPN was operated by Paramount, the rights holder of Star Trek properties. The very first show ever broadcast on UPN? Voyager, another Star Trek series.
The 1990s were a golden age of television animation, but cartoons are a business, and even the most beloved shows are sometimes canceled to make room for more profitable programming. Here's the real reason these 90s cartoons were canceled. In the 1990s, Fox became the only place on broadcast TV where primetime animation could find an audience and flourish creatively. Following the success of The Simpsons, the network debuted another very different show about a cartoon family in early 1997, King of the Hill. Created by Beavis and Butt-Head mastermind Mike Judge, the low-key but hilarious series centered on Hank Hill, an extremely uptight family man from the town of Arnold, Texas, who loved beer, football, and selling propane. He often struggled to relate to his weird tween son, Bobby.
Teaching my boy the facts of life is my job.
Damn, you got that right.
King of the Hill earned all kinds of Emmy attention and was a consistent hit with viewers. It remained on the Fox lineup for well over a decade, but after 259 episodes, King of the Hill was out of gas. Its final episode, To Sirloin with Love, aired just before the start of the 2009-2010 TV season. King of the Hill helped further popularize network cartoons, but ironically, the show was forced to step aside for a new animated series. Shortly after Fox announced its final order of King of the Hill episodes, it gave a full season pickup to The Cleveland Show, a spin-off of the hit cartoon Family Guy. Before a slew of blockbuster X-Men movies hit the silver screen, kids got to know Professor Xavier's crew of superpowered mutants on Fox's Saturday morning staple X-Men, the animated series. Based on the Marvel comics that date back to the 60s, the show was mostly serialized, with viewers required to turn in each week to see how multi-part storylines played out. X-Men the Animated Series debuted on Fox in 1992 and eventually moved to its weekend morning time slot, where it aired until 1997. That's a bit longer than the network or producers had envisioned. The show was only supposed to run 65 episodes, a standard production run for an animated show in the 90s. Fox ultimately wanted a total of 76 episodes, and once those 76 episodes were finished, so was X-Men, the Animated Series.
I miss you. I never knew how much I would.
We all miss her, Scott. The question is, how will we move on without her?
Doug premiered in 1991 and was one of the sweetest, gentlest cartoons of its era. It was told from the point of view of awkward tween Doug Funny, who makes up for his painful shyness with a wildly active fantasy life.
This wasn't so hard. Maybe if I kept at it. Yeah.
Nickelodeon ended production on Doug in 1994. Shortly after that, Disney purchased ABC and launched the One Saturday Morning programming block. According to Doug creator Jim Jenkins, Disney aggressively pursued his animation studio Jumbo Pictures because it wanted Doug. In Slimed, an oral history of Nickelodeon's golden age, Jenkins asked, "So, should I stay with Nickelodeon, who is through with me, or get bought by Disney where we get to create 65 new half hours of Doug, a feature-length movie, Doug Live for their theme park, toys, books, additional funding for development and production on many new series?" In 1996, brand spanking new Doug hit ABC. More focused on the business side of Doug, Jenkins wasn't around to maintain quality, and the show arguably went downhill when others stepped in. Casting director Wendy Litwack said, "Doug suffered when it changed to Disney because of network intervention." The new Doug came to a conclusion at the end of its third season, followed by a big screen movie. Hey Arnold joined the Nicktoons lineup in 1996 and quickly became one of Nickelodeon's most popular and enduring shows. For 5 seasons, fans eagerly tuned in to watch the many adventures of this group of highly independent city kids.
Steel mill? We're at the steel mill?
Sure, why'd you think you were?
This train isn't haunted?
In 1998, Nickelodeon renewed Hey Arnold and ordered a feature film, which creator Greg Bartlett began working on after the 5th season. It was a straight-to-video project called Arnold Saves the Neighborhood, but it was also released to theaters as Hey Arnold, the movie. The movie flopped in 2002, earning only $13 million at the American box office. That marked the end of Hey Arnold in any form, until Bartlett returned to Nickelodeon to produce Hey Arnold, the Jungle Movie in 2016. Roseanne Barr ruled ABC in the late 80s and early 90s. Roseanne, the sitcom based on her stand-up comedy act, finished the 1989-90 season as the #1 show on network TV. In the fall of 1990, the network tried to capitalize on her popularity with a Roseanne Barr show just for kids, a Saturday morning cartoon called Little Rosey. Little Rosey revolved around an 8-year-old version of Barr. Nobody from the Roseanne sitcom voiced their animated kitty counterparts, not even Barr. ABC tried to interfere with the production early on, requesting that Rosie's friend group include more boys. It was reportedly a difficult show to make, and ratings weren't so great. No wonder Little Rosey only lasted 1 season.
Mrs. Kanker, I want you to know I'm sorry I kicked the ball into your yard. We don't do it on purpose, and we don't like to bother.